Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've recorded meetings and conventions here in Southern California since 1998. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994, and I got sober in a small town called Santa Maria. I moved to Los Angeles when I had 5 years sober and started recording meetings shortly after I got here. In 2013, I started recording conventions. So please enjoy the channel. Please like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Just click right down there. Thank you.
Now it is time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Paul.
Want that motorcycle moved quietly. Quietly. Rodeo. Black leather, white lights. I've spoken at like 3 AA meetings in about the last 10 days. No, I've spoken at 2, and this is my 3rd. And went to a couple of meetings in between, and it's always unnerving to have to stand up in front of people and tell the truth. My name is Paul Williams. I'm a very grateful recovering alcoholic. So AOL had Bill Clinton on their little thing when you sign on tonight. It said that for speaking, Bill Clinton gets $400,000, you know, and I thought, well, I'm speaking tonight, and I get my life back, so I think I got the better deal, you know. Tonight's speech will be filled with wonderful little moments like that that'll touch your heart. You'll carry them away. And I played golf today. My eyes are a little burnt, or else I'm losing my eyesight. One of the two. My natural habitat is not out of doors. What color I have, I got from the light in my refrigerator, and I've discovered golf, and I play golf with a lot of sober guys, and it's interesting because we take rigorous honesty onto the golf course with us, and a lot of people don't, and I just, you know, I'm no good at it. I've never loved anything that I did so poorly except maybe early sex, you know, just, you know. Wasn't any good at that either, but I really loved it, you know. But I get out there and I play golf with my little swizzle sticks, and everybody does short jokes about, you know, hey, ain't that a riding crop you're using? You know. In my highly evolved Gandhi meets Jiminy Cricket way, I tell them to go screw themselves, and I hit it about 40 yards. I play golf everywhere around the world. The only place I don't love it is Ireland, because people keep grabbing me going, where'd you hide the gold, you little bastard? I love Alcoholics Anonymous. Monday I'll be 14 years sober, and it kills me that it's Monday and not tonight. So I really, you know, thank you. Because I would love to have taken a cake tonight, but it's, you know, we don't take our cakes early, and I'm not 14 until I'm 14. But boy, I'm sliding there close to it. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous for my drinking, and I stayed for my thinking. We meet often so the newcomers can find us, and so we don't kill somebody ourselves, you know, because what's happened to me in 13 years is, you know, when I was new, I was bright and cheerful and glowing, and I glowed in the dark. I was such a spiritual giant, you know, and slowly but surely I am hovering, getting really close to authenticity. Not as cheerful all the time as I was the first couple of years, but I'm grateful. I'm probably more grateful than I could ever imagine I would be at this point in my life, you know. God, I drank, you know, this last year, it's interesting. This program has given me principles to live by, and I haven't always done that. This is, a little over a year ago, I filed for divorce, because right before that I was compromising vows that I'd made. I was, you know, I'm not exactly, you're not looking at an Episcopal minister here. You're looking at a drunk, you know, and I found that there are certain principles that we have that we live, things we live by, like rigorous honesty, that when I begin to play around with that, I get really uncomfortable, and I get a feeling of being absolutely lost. And so I changed my life. I ran away from home at age 62. It's been the best year of my life, you know. I was 49 years old when I got sober. It wasn't the best childhood, but it was the longest, you know. And, you know, I was raised in a household where alcohol was part of the reward for a good day's job. I mean, my dad was in construction. My dad was 6'2", great big burly guy. who died in an alcohol-related accident when he was not quite 60. So I'll be 64 this year. My life, the last 13 years have been an amazing gift. The last 4 years have been even more so because I'm living years he never got to live. And I always wondered what would have happened if he'd ever had that magical awakening where he could say, I'm an alcoholic, and find these rooms. What if he'd found these rooms? Because when I come into these rooms, everything in my life gets better. When I found these rooms, everything got better. My dad was a really good man. We moved a lot. I went to 9 different schools by the time I was in the 9th grade, and I was tiny. I mean, you know, well, this is a small bottle of water. So, not really. When I was a kid, I was tiny. I could run under coffee tables in the 9th grade, and I just, you know, and I never really felt like I fit in. We were always moving. We were always new kids. I was always the new kid in school, the new kid in town. Nobody ever said to me, how the hell does that feel? What's it like to say goodbye to your friends and go to, you know, because we didn't talk about feelings in the 50s. It was, now my daughter, I have a daughter at Tulane who's 19 years old. Because of this program, when she was 5, she was saying things like, I think my brother's really getting in touch with his anger, you know. My daughter sounded like John Bradshaw at 5, you know. But when I was a kid, we didn't talk about these things at all. We didn't have that touchy-feely stuff happening. And I know my dad loved me. I know that he tried to be a good dad. Every now and then, I always tell this one story in my pitch about my dad. And I hope it's true. By God, the longer I'm sober, the more I think about it. I go, are you embellishing this? And I remember it, and I close my eyes, and I can see it, and I remember it. It is true. My dad was, would get me up in the middle of the night, and we'd have a father and son bonding moment, you know, whether I wanted it or not. He'd get me up at 4 in the morning. And my dad used to drink pretty heavily, and I remember him getting me up one night, way, way late at night. We were living in Lucasville, Ohio, which is right where Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia come together. It's a awful spot. I've been back, and it's not, I remember it awful, it's still awful. It's evolved into just as awful, you know. But we were living in Lucasville, Ohio, and my dad got me up at 4 o'clock in the morning. He said, you know what, my boy? We didn't use the word bonding then, but we were going to bond. He said, we're going to have a father and son moment. I'm going to take you to see a professional baseball game. I'm going to take you to see the Cleveland Indians play baseball. We got in the car. He had a 50 Merc. This was like 1952 maybe. Black 50 Merc like Jimmy Dean drove. And I sat in the back seat, and he was in the front seat with a buddy of his, Ike McShane, passing the bottle back and forth. And it was a rainy night. It was raining horizontally. And the car's all over the road. And he's looking back going, let's take a ball game with my boy. See the Cleveland Indians play baseball. And I remember thinking, don't look at me. Don't bond. We didn't say bond, but whatever that was, it was, you know, look at the road. And I felt like my concentration is what was keeping us on the road. And I can close my eyes. I'm 63. I can close my eyes. I can see that car moving around. And I felt like my concentration was keeping it on the road. If there are any Al-Anons present, I apologize to you for what we do to you. I'll tell you that I did the exact same thing with my kids years later, you know, driving along, loaded, sneaking a toot. My dad was going to take me to see the Cleveland Indians play baseball. Drove through that rainstorm to Cincinnati. Drove to the wrong city. It was a classic alcoholic moment, you know. Cleveland Indians didn't play in Cincinnati. Went to the ballpark. Ballpark was empty. You know, the sun was starting to come through a little bit, and he said, well, we're going to get great seats, you know. Sat in the car. No other cars showed up. Finally, he got up and he walked in. I close my eyes, and I can see my dad walking up to the box office. He's wearing brown suit pants, and a white, what we call a wife beater now, you know, and slippers. God bless him. Slippers. He walked over there and he looked at the sign and he looked at the schedule and he realized what he'd done. And I saw the alcoholic slump. And how many of you have done it? You've just meant to do the right thing and just screwed up again. And his shoulders went down, and he got a little closer to my size, and he came back to the car. He said, "My son, there's not going to be a ball game today." He bit his lip for a minute, and he leaned forward and he said, "But it's the thought that counts." And some part of my little psyche went, "Why, get it? It's the thought that counts." Well, hell. For 49 years, I was one of the thoughtiest little creatures you ever ran into, you know. I thought about voting. I thought about paying off my debts. I thought about telling the truth. But he didn't do it. Now, I find the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you guys tell me it's not the thought. It's not even so much about my feelings. Your feelings won't kill you, you know. It's about what you do. It's about your actions. And, you know, Casey, you said it tonight. Incidentally, 16 years old when you got sober, I hadn't even begun to properly spill by then, you know. But what impresses me most is that, you know, my son is also happily a member of this magical fellowship. And he used to go to a meeting when he was in New York called Never Had a Legal. All kids that have never had a legal drink, and that impresses me, you know. I work sometimes with an organization called Community High School in Nashville that's all sober kids at this high school. These are like 15-year-old kids walking around talking about their higher power and inventory. What? It's unnatural. It's frightening, you know. It's like, oh my God. But it impresses me so much. And if you're young and you're new, it's amazing. And, you know, part of me can go back, well, you know, I didn't hang in there, or the dope must be strong, or whatever. Like, the fact is, you've had a spiritual awakening. You know, I was reading again today about how many alcoholics were around and sober when they started writing the book. We're talking about maybe 40 people sitting around sharing stories or something. And I know there's somebody in the back of the room who's going to stop me on the way out and go, you're so wrong about that, you know. But the fact is, this is an amazing, magical program. There is nothing more important to this program than the newcomer. We do meet often so you can find us. But this is a program where we also get to feel, I feel amazingly useful when I talk to somebody who is new to this program. I have never in my entire life felt more useful than I am today when I'm talking to another alcoholic, you know. And this is a program, I heard somebody once say, where you show up. This is a program where you show up as a superstar and you work your way into the chorus. You know, so if you're new, congratulations. You're a superstar. We need you. We love you. You have had a great stroke of luck to be born in this century when Alcoholics Anonymous was created. M. Scott Peck said it was the most important thing that happened in the 20th century, the creation of the 12-step program. You know, the first time when I drank, the first drinking, the reward for drinking wasn't the alcohol, it wasn't the chemical, it was the ritual. When I was 14, my dad was killed in a car wreck, and I was shipped to Long Beach, California, to live with an aunt and uncle. And everybody was so tall and hit puberty at 9, you know. 6 feet tall, great tans, you know, handsome. Going into the showers and going, you know, I looked like a peeled cantaloupe at that age, you know. Remember going into the showers in high school, and my first prayer was, God, I don't care how big you make me, just cover me with fur, you know. Let's get some hair going here, can't we, you know? Because we don't want to feel different. Because we don't want to feel different. You know what? Be careful what you pray for, because I'll tell you, I've got hair places today I don't need hair, you know. Tops of my ears don't get cold. But drinking with other kids was a great source. I mean, for me, it was let's get drunk and throw up and be somebody. Let's participate in this ritual. And it made me feel, in a sense, like I began to fit in, you know. And as I said, I don't know when it happened, when I crossed that line from use to abuse to addiction. But somewhere along the line, probably in my 20s, I began to act really alcoholically. Although I began to drink alcoholically. Before that, I think I acted alcoholically. If you wanted to talk to me in high school, and you went, hey, Paul, come over, I would tap my watch and go, like I couldn't talk to you. Because I didn't know how. I hadn't found that chemical that made me feel like I was going to be all right. It's part of what alcohol did for me. Alcohol worked for a while. My first real drug was probably amphetamines, Drive to Phoenix pills. Let's go see Larry in Phoenix. Who's Larry? I don't know. We'll find him when he's over there. I loved the enthusiasm. I loved not sleeping. I loved that hyper-awareness, I loved it when I'd been up so long that doorknobs scare you, you just, Jesus. And alcohol made me feel like somehow I just fit in. It was that little something that just took the edge off. And boy, if alcohol made me feel big enough to deal with the rest of the world, then cocaine made me feel like I could shoot basketball for money. It was everything I needed. It just, and it was, like I say, for a while, alcohol worked. I would walk into the bar, a Shetland pony, and come out a Mustang, just stud muffin, just cute, and, and confidence works. It's amazing. It's amazing what a little shot of confidence will do, There are women in this world that go, confidence, you must have something, I didn't have a clue about how to be a sweet, loving person or how to have a relationship, so what I did with my life is, and some of you older people will remember, basically I became a songwriter, and in the 70s wrote some codependent anthems that been very, very good to me, Well, I said, you get sober and you go, wait a minute, I won't last today without you is not a healthy thought, I was like, But it's who I am, and I think it's who we all are. As alcoholics, I think alcoholics have that moment when, maybe at least for me, that probably that first moment of being breastfed, the breast is there and it's big and soft and white or whatever color your breast happened to be. Yeah, mine's white, It's just wonderful. You're getting fed and the breast is taken away and you're full and if you're one of those people that just goes, wait a minute, is it coming back? If you're one of those people, you're my kind of alcoholic. That's just who I am. There's part of me that, there's a guy that speaks and walks around hitting himself in the head with a big book. I'm not going to get what I want, and they're going to take away what I've got. I'm going to lose what I've got, whatever it is. There's some piece of that fear that is a part of who I am. There's some piece of that fear, that not feeling that what I am is enough for the rest of the world to deal with, And it hasn't gone away. I'll tell you, in 13 years of recovery, it's a sickness that is still inside me. There's a guy that I sponsor named Wes, who some of you know, who moved to Denver. And Wes talks about getting up in the middle of the night and the rats are chewing on the wires. It's just, you're over. You might as well lay down and you stupid little, it's just nasty. Well, I have a God in my life today, and so I tell that voice in my head to shut up, I've learned to, because of you, because of the steps that I've worked, and because of a sponsor who's a magnificent man, I've learned that I'm all right, that I'm okay. And I've also learned to spot my own sickness when it occurs. I've mentioned that I play golf a lot. I went to a celebrity golf thing in Kentucky, in Louisville, Kentucky, and it's one of the, celebrity golf is like God's waiting room. It's just like, yeah, I'm gonna go play golf now, So it's really terrible. You show up with a bunch of guys to play golf, and they say, I wonder who our celebrity's going to be. And you go, it's me, you assholes. Wait a minute. But anyway, I went to what you do is you go and you play golf, and they raise a lot of money for charity, and they have a big dinner the night before usually, and then a big dinner afterwards and sell. But anyway, I went to what you do is you go and you play golf, and they raise a lot of money for charity, and they have a big dinner the night before usually, and then a big dinner afterwards and sell things and all. Anyway, I was in Louisville, Kentucky, and I walked over to sit with the table with all these people that had paid to play golf with me. And there was a woman, a really attractive woman, and everybody was all related, a big family. And I looked at them and I went, you know what? I'm smiling. The caps are getting a lot of work, But I'm thinking I don't want to be here. They're not going to like me. They're not going to know who I am. They're not going to care about what I think. It's like I don't fit in. It's not going to work. Whatever. And the woman is wearing diamond earrings that look It looked like they cost more than my first 2 cars. You know, just big old expensive rocks. And I wear a little earring that is a circle with a triangle inside. She said to me, "I like your earring." And I almost spit at her. Thank you. Thank you. You know what it stands for? And she said, "Yeah, I've got 22 years." And I went, oh, you do? And she said, "Yeah." She said, "I got 22 years, and that guy sitting over there is my husband. He's got 24 years. That's my son. He's got 9 years. That's his wife. She's got 11 years. It was an entire table, and I was like, "Pick me up and love me, Mommy," you know. I am home, you know. I am home. So what I felt was that magnificent warmth we feel when we meet another alcoholic, when you know even raising my arm at a meeting, it pulls the lungs away, the ribs away from the lung, and you get that big breath, and it's what Casey said. You feel safe. I felt safe. But right after I noticed how safe I felt, I noticed where I had been before that, and that is my disease floating around inside my head. That is my disease floating around inside my head that says, you know what, it's all about me, and they don't get it, and it's not good, and it's a negativity, and it's a lack of trust that is absolutely sick, and it's sad. Bless you. You know, I'm here today because somebody was honest enough to me, you know, that they would reflect the truth to me. Somebody, because I started drinking and using, and I. You know you're an alcoholic when you misplace a decade, and the 80s were the Ishtar years. I don't know, you know, which I thought was some of my best work. What happened is I left my wife and my kids for a 22-year-old psych major who, it seemed like the brilliant thing to do at the time, and she was brave and honest, and she told me, "I love you, but I won't stay with you if you're drinking and using because I think you're an alcoholic and you're going to die." And I did what a lot of us do. We try to get sober for somebody else. And I went to a place called Schick Shadle in Santa Barbara, which is aversion therapy. Do you know about aversion therapy? Let me tell you about it. They give you an injection to make you sick. And when you're so sick that you can't even stand up, they sit you in a chair and they feed you all different kinds of booze, especially your favorite. Lots of it, and you throw up, and you throw up, and you drink. There's a little bowl right on the chair just for that. You throw up, and you throw up, and then you lay down with a towel of vomit around your neck for about 3 hours. And then the next morning, they have you in, and they give you a shot of sodium pentothal, and they ask you, while you're under, if you want a drink. If you say yes, you go throw up some more. They said, "Paul, we're really worried about you." I said, "Why is that?" They said, "You're the only one who is consistently early for the sodium pentothal." Yeah. Cutting in line for the sodium pentothal, you know. Because I loved it. It took me out of myself. 199, 3, bye. You know, I loved it, you know. But by God, their aversion therapy worked, and for 7 months, and I didn't have a program, and I didn't go to meetings, and I didn't have a sponsor, and I didn't have a God, but for 7 months, I did not drink or use. It was really wonderful to be around me, you know. I developed jaw muscles that are... 7 months into it, I went to Jamaica to work on a project, and I was in Ocho Rios, and it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And on willpower alone, I had stayed sober for 7 months. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, butler in a white outfit with a silver tray and a little bottle and everything says, "Mr. Williams, would you like to have something to drink?" You know, and I thought, wait a minute. He said, "Perhaps a rum and coke." And I went, we're out by the pool, this beautiful home in Ocho Rios, haven't had a drink in 7 months. I am the Paul Williams. Yeah. I can handle one drink. So at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I had 1 rum and coke. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I was at Bob Marley's grave. explaining reggae to a lot of black people I didn't know, you know. Yeah. Because it's who I am, you know, boom. I start drinking, I start lying. It's just who I am. It's just who I am. Add alcohol, and all of a sudden, the imaginary life begins. And you know, it's just sad because I had no idea about this. In 1989, I went to Oklahoma City to do a concert, and I had a full-blown psychotic episode. I was taking Antabuse and using cocaine with it, and hadn't slept in a long time. And basically what happened is I had a full-blown psychotic episode. I was beaten up for 50 minutes by an invisible monster. I was thrown down. It was terrifying. It was just, you know, I mean, I was thrown down escalator stairs. I walked out of the hotel suite talking to the promoter, and as we were having this conversation, it's funny, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon gig, and I was wearing a tuxedo. We weren't high or anything, you know, out of school, you know. And I was thrown higher than my own head against the wall of the hallway. Just some creature grabbed me and threw me, and it went on for 50 minutes. We canceled the gig, called a psychiatrist, whatever, and you know what? I did the show the next day, and I came back to L.A., and I continued to drink, and I continued to use, and I continued to lie about it. And that's, you know, and when we rise up in our disease, we can be powerful. This little girl would say to me, "You're using, aren't you? You're using. Just tell me the truth." And I would go, "What's the matter? What's wrong with you? You've got a lot of issues with men, don't you?" You know. And she would doubt herself, and she'd go to bed, and I'd sneak out the puppy door and score more drugs, you know. Up above Sunset Strips where I lived, and we had a really squeaky front door, and when you've been up 2 days and nights, the sound of a door is like, rah! You know? In a blackout, I called a doctor, and I said I want to go to treatment. And this guy called me the next day, and he said, "I found a place for you." And I said, "What are you talking about?" You know, somebody's been using my body again, you know. He said, "No, you called me last night," and I had that moment I just threw in the towel. I said, "Yeah," because I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to sneak out the puppy door anymore. I didn't want to drive to Santa Barbara with my kids in the car having a toot and a drink, you know. I didn't want to drive to Echo Park at 4 in the morning to score. I didn't want it. So I went to rehab, and I did what I was told, you know. And I had an amazing experience when I sat down to write my first step. Because when I wrote my first step, I didn't know the expression, "I want what you've got," but I prayed about it before I wrote the first step, and I said, you know, I want to do it like they do it. I want to do it, you know, I'd heard of some people that I really respected that were sober, and I said, I want to do that too, God. You have to show me how. There's something I don't know, and you have to show it to me. And I grabbed what I thought was a blank piece of paper to write my first step, and I turned it over because there was something printed on the other side. I turned it over, and for the first time in my life, I read the words, "God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life." And we know that's the third step prayer. And there was something in the phrase, freedom from the bondage of self, that I went, yeah, I get it. You've been taken prisoner, Paulie. You've been taken prisoner. I also noticed that it said, the spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. It said it right in front of the promises. Check it out. And I thought, how the hell do you live a spiritual life? I knew that it involved a higher power of some sort. It involved God. And my sponsor tells me that it involves the way I treat people. He calls me up and he asks me, "How are you treating the world today?" I went, "Aren't you having a slip of the tongue? Don't you mean, how's the world treating me?" And he went, "No. Don't give a rat's ass about how the world's treating you, but if you monitor the way you treat the world, everything in your life will get better." So there's a part of my spiritual life right there. You know, restraint of pen and tongue. Do what you say you're going to do. Show up. Show up. Do the best you can. And then there's something else that was really important to me in rehab. I remembered how I would feel when I would score. And you know what? When I would start using this crap, it was always awful. I mean, by the end, it was just always awful. But I remember when I'd be calling the dealer, and I'd been up 2 days and nights, and I'd run out of blow, and I just, it's all falling apart. And I'm angry, and I weigh 187 pounds. I'm 50 pounds more than now. I look like one of those inflatable dolls you push over and they come right back up, you know. Only with bad breath. It just really. But I've been up 2 days and nights, and it's all awful. And I call the dealer, and I'm going, God, bitch, where are you? And finally, she answers the phone, and by the way she answers the phone, I can tell something's happening, and I already feel different. And she comes over, or I go over, and I come back, and all of a sudden I got my Stolichnaya, and I open up this 8-ball, and it's sparkly, and I feel fabulous. I'm safe. I have everything I need. Paulie is going to be all right. Now, as soon as I begin having a toot, my Stoli, maybe even with a little ice cube in it, it's gone. I can't find it. It's disappeared on me. But before I had it, before I touched it, before the poison was in my system, what was I experiencing? And I thought about it later, and I'll tell you what I was experiencing, and I think a lot of us have felt that. We were experiencing the power of faith. I mean, that's absolute faith. Faith that I've got what I need to make it through the night. I got what I need to impress you. I got what I need to be enough to deal with the world. So if faith in this crap is going to do this for me, imagine what a faith in a higher power, a loving God is going to do for me. And that's what's happened. That's what's happened to my life. You know? I'll tell you how I happened to get here. I mean, part of my story, a big part of the story, I think, although I was the star of my story for a lot of years. I went back to Nashville, and while I was in Nashville writing more codependent anthems, I went to speak at the prison, and I came back after speaking at the prison, and I went to the hotel, and I was, there he is, glowing in the dark, just that, you know, that spiritual giant, let me lead you out of the darkness, you know. And I get up to my hotel room, and the key doesn't work, and it's like a quick trip from Gandhi to Himmler for me. I'm like, oh, son of a bitch, man, you know. I go back down to the desk and to get another key, and the lobby is full of guys with little badges on, and it's a convention of talent buyers. There's a guy who comes up to me and he says, hey, I just want to say hi to you. I'm Gary, good. I booked you one time, and his thing says Oklahoma City, and I went, wait a minute, Oklahoma City, yeah, right? That's where I freaked out. Was that you? And he said, yeah, that was me. And I went, well, I'm sober now. And at the time I was like 10 years sober, and he said, yeah, I heard in the rooms you were sober. And I went, wait a minute, you heard in the rooms? Did you find it too? And he reached in his pocket and he pulled out a chip for 17 years. And I went, wow. I did the math real quick, and I went, you were 7 years sober. You were 7 years sober when that happened. He said, that's right. I said, what'd you think? He said, it scared me to death. I said, what'd you do? He said, I called my sponsor. I said, of course you did. I said, well, what did your sponsor tell you to do? He said, I'll tell you exactly what we did. He said, we got together a prayer circle. We got a bunch of alcoholics on the phone, and we got together a prayer circle, and we prayed that you'd get sober. We prayed that you'd be relieved of that suffering, because you were suffering. He said, my God, I've never seen a little creature so in such pain in my life as you were, you know. He said, you were just in pain. And 2 months later in a blackout, maybe 6 weeks later in a blackout. By the time I'm 20, it'll be 3 days later in a blackout. I made that phone call, and it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. You know, everything in my life is better. Everything in my life is better. One of the things that is most important to me is I get to share this program with, you know, my son. My son was 19 when he called me one time, and he said, Dad, I haven't had a drink in 22 days. And I went, really? How do you feel? He said, terrible. I keep buying it for my friends to watch them drink it, you know. I took him to a meeting. I asked him if he wanted to go to a meeting. He said, yeah. And I took him to the log cabin, and Wes was in town and was speaking there, my friend Wes. So it was the first time I ever saw my son stand up and identify as an alcoholic. And he was a little atheist at the time, or an agnostic, really. You know, he's just like kind of figuring the world out. 19 years old. And I went to the meeting, went to breakfast afterwards, got out of his program, got out of his way, let him talk to people around him, and watched him get involved. And about a month later, he called me and he said, "Dad, guess what?" I said, "What?" He said, "Isn't God amazing? You're my great-grand sponsor." Actually, he said it backwards. He said, "Dad, guess what? You're my great-grand sponsor. Isn't God amazing?" And I went, wow. There's everything in the world I need in my life is in that sentence, you know. That my son is calling me, that we're both sober, that we're both working a program. And if I can have the kind of amazement in God that he does at that moment, if I can maintain that amazement, then I have everything I need in this world, you know. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and Rustum, I appreciate you asking me to speak. We have to leave right after I never leave a meeting before the meeting's over, but I can't stay to get my hugs and kisses and all tonight. But I know a lot of you are here, and I'm sure you'll live just fine with that. But I got to tell you, I love this program. It's a real honor to speak at Rodeo. This is a special group of people, and of course, it's an amazing program, and I'll keep coming back. Thanks.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.